Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you.
Oh, don't you know it's the Bill Arnold Show? It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. Have you had this experience before? I know you have. You've just been misunderstood by somebody. Oh, is that a hard situation to be in? Because it hurts, doesn't it? When you just feel misunderstood. We're going to talk about that and how to handle misunderstandings today with none other than a Hebrew scholar. Dr. Rebecca Rhee is going to join us for this discussion. Rebecca, welcome.
Thank you for having me back.
Oh, yeah. I always look forward to your teaching and all the work you do getting ready to do this show. I think you work harder than any one of my guests.
Oh, well, maybe it's because I need to.
Yeah, you say you've been a lifelong struggler. Well, I don't even know what that means, but I'm intrigued.
It means that I'm someone for whom things don't necessarily come easy.
Okay.
And I find myself often in a conflicted place. And so I have to work really hard to gain understanding or wisdom or perspective.
Well,
and I feel like I'm kind of a sensitive person, and sensitive people tend to be lifelong strugglers.
Well, no one listening would identify with that. So you're on an island all by yourself.
Yes, and I feel sensitive about that.
All right, let's talk about handling misunderstandings. And I know we're going to dive into scripture on this, so I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about the common experience of being misunderstood by others. And I was thinking about this and realized there's a particular kind of pain that comes when you look at yourself through another person's eyes, and what you see is a very negative image. I'll give you some examples. Maybe you struggle with your weight and you are judged as being lazy or self-indulgent. Or maybe like my autistic son, you have trouble with your speech and your words just don't come out the right way. And so other people suspect your intentions or your intelligence. Maybe you struggle with anxiety or PTSD, and other people have labeled you as crazy or oversensitive. So those are just three examples. There's tons more. But whatever the case.
Those are good ones.
Whatever the case, I think this is something that God really wants to help us with. Even though we don't necessarily stop to think about it and ask him for help, I think he's acutely interested in helping us with this, because according to 1 Corinthians 14:33, God is not a God of confusion. And when we see the process of his creating the world in Genesis 1, everything has a natural order to it. And specifically, he creates that order through speech. So the misunderstanding that we're going to be talking about today is mainly that which occurs through speech. If you don't mind, we could just jump right in and start reading the story. I was very, very pleased to find out that 1 Samuel chapter 1, which is the story of Hannah, deals directly with this, and it functions as a little roadmap. I felt like I was unfolding a roadmap, and it was showing me the places to stop so I could arrive at a place where I could find resolution for misunderstanding. And I want to mention one thing before I begin, which is Hannah and Eli are two important characters in this story. And in Hebrew, Hannah's name is Hannah, and Eli's name is Eli. And I can say their names in the English sounding way, or I can just flip into the Hebrew, which is what I might end up doing just because I've been studying them that long. That way.
You can pick whatever you want to do. But I
Okay.
appreciate you clarifying that up front, because there will people who will join the podcast and they'll go, she doesn't even know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, so Hannah's name is Hannah, which I think is so beautiful.
It's a
Hannah.
beautiful name, yeah.
And Eli is Eli, and Eli means my God, because El is one of God's names, and E means my. So literally, his name means my God.
That's beautiful.
So let's jump in. We're going to 1 Samuel chapter 1. We're going to read to verse 20, and I am reading from the English Standard Version. So, there was a certain man of Haramathaim, Ephraim, of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, the son of Yeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Suf, an Ephrathite. He had 2 wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man used to go up year by year from his city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the 2 priests, sons of Eli, I slipped, Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? And why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? After they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. And Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was speaking in her heart, only her lips moved, and her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli took her to be a drunken woman. And Eli said to her, How long will you go on being drunk? Put away your wine from you. But Hannah answered, No, my Lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. Then Eli answered, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him. And she said, Let your servant find favor in your eyes. Then the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. They rose early in the morning and worshiped before the Lord. Then they went back to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time, Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Shemuel, for she said, I have asked for him from the Lord. And Shemuel is Samuel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we're going to stop. So just to begin, you might be a little surprised, as I was, to learn 2 things when you approach this text for the first time. And that is that the first person to misunderstand Hannah is not Eli the priest, who thinks she's drunk. The first person to misunderstand Hannah is her own husband, Elkanah, who has 2 wives. Now, Peninnah is able to bear children, but Hannah is not. And Peninnah makes sure to make life as miserable as she can for Hannah over that fact. And her shaming of Hannah is as cruel as it is constant, and poor Hannah suffers deeply because of it. And what does Elkanah say to her in verse 8? He says, "Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" And I think, just as a woman and just thinking about this, that question is really tone deaf because it reflects how little the man understands the emotional agony Hannah is in because of her childlessness and her torment, and the value that was placed on being able to bear children as a woman in that time period. So again, it's just a tone deaf question because the answer would be no, you're not good. No, you're definitely not as good to me as 10 sons. So the next surprising thing that I learned was that the first thing that we hear out of Hannah is not her vow to God, but this. It's silence, which can be its own form of language. When her husband Elkanah asks that tone-deaf question, she replies with silence. And it's as if she knows that nothing good is going to come of unleashing her vexations at him with a torrent of words. So, which I think displays just amazing self-restraint on her part, considering all the suffering and provocation she's been facing year after year after year.
Yeah.
So what is the first? What is the first thing? Sorry.
She could have had quite a different response to that, and she chose the silence. That's amazing.
Yes. So what is the first thing that we learn to do when we are misunderstood by someone who may knowingly or unknowingly hit a nerve with their speech to us? And the answer is, of course, keep silent. Say nothing if it will do no good. And I realize that this is far harder than it's easy to say, hard to do. Proverbs 21:23 says, "He who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps his soul from trouble." So Hannah definitely doesn't allow the pot that's being stirred to bubble over, even though she's just grievously provoked by Peninnah and also provoked by her husband, whether he knows it or not.
Rebecca, can we just repeat Proverbs 21:23 again? He
Sure.
who guards his mouth and his tongue keeps his soul from trouble.
Yes.
That's powerful.
Yes. Powerful. And it's often the last thing we think to do.
I know.
So that leads us to our second stopping place along our little misunderstanding roadmap, which is if she's not fighting with Peninnah or clarifying things with her husband, to whom does Hannah direct her first speech in the story? And for that, we look down at verse 11.
And I think
O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. So the first place she ends up going to is God. And I just found myself saying, can we say the same? The very, very first place that we go is God when we are misunderstood and provoked. 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you.
All right, there's another verse that I have to repeat because I know people are driving or they're thinking, hang on, what was that verse again? And it was 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. We're going to take a little break. Dr. Rebecca Rhee is my guest. We're talking about handling misunderstandings. We'll take a little break. Be right back. It is my deepest desire that you take the very first step of faith by placing your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. If you've got questions about what it means to begin a relationship with Jesus, text the word faith to 224. I'm back with Dr. Rebecca Rhee. We're talking about handling misunderstandings. And right at the break, we were talking about 1 Peter 5:7. I think it's worth saying again, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. The first place Hannah goes is to God. And Rebecca's great question is, can we say the same? All right, now, as we listen to this file, let's talk about the three things that we're going to learn from this.
Well, the first thing is that this I didn't know until I looked at the Hebrew, which is Hannah is the first person in the entire Hebrew Bible to call God Lord of Hosts. And the word for hosts in Hebrew is Tsevaot. So she has the distinction of being the first person to use that name of God. And what does that name mean in the Hebrew? Where is it used elsewhere? What kind of context is it in? So it can be a military term when you're fighting against an army, and it could be an army of human beings or an army of angels. It could be a heavenly court. So God has his courtiers in heaven. And it could also just mean a great multitude. But whatever it does mean, and she might mean something entirely different from these three definitions that I'm giving you, but whatever she does mean when she's saying this special term, it's an acknowledgement that her barrenness begins and ends with God, that he's got total control of this situation. She has such clarity about this. Her pain doesn't seem to blur her vision, or make her run around in circles trying to find other sources of power that might be behind why she's barren. She just has such moral and emotional clarity as to, well, it doesn't matter what lesser thing is at work here. I know God is ultimately behind all of this, and so I'm going straight to him. And as she prays, Hannah frames her barrenness in terms of remembering and forgetting. And I found that so interesting because she talks as if the Lord of hosts, this almighty sovereign, has somehow forgotten her. And I don't think she means that literally. I think she means she's feeling overlooked, especially because she has a rival who's got sons and daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So she feels like she's overlooked. And I think that's why she strikes the bargain. If you give me a son, I will give him back to you. And I know as a special needs mom for myself, I know that feeling of being forgotten because my son has verbal deficits, quite serious ones. And so he's basically nonverbal. And when I hear other parents talking with their children, sometimes I can feel forgotten as a mom, or that my son has been forgotten as a speaker. That's just kind of a natural, when you compare yourself to others or in community with other people, it's very easy to feel like you're not in that circle of remembrance that other people are and that other people can take for granted so very easily.
Whereas I see you as the champion of all moms.
Oh, thank you. We special needs moms have to stick together and remember for each other.
Yeah, of
we
course.
Really do. You can't do this by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to point out that there's some strange language at the end of Hannah's remarkable prayer. She ends the prayer like this. Then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. And first of all, these concluding words of prayer are noteworthy because when God finally gives us what we want, we usually tend to hold on to it for dear life, as if it were ours to possess.
Wow.
How many of us turn around and give the gift right back? Like if it's money, if it's a marriage, if it's a child, if it's a job, if it's recognition in the limelight, how many of us just take that and turn around and give it right back to God and say, you gave this to me and now I'm giving it back to you? Can
I speculate and say a small percentage?
I think it's almost impossible. I was thinking about that part of the New Testament where Jesus heals these lepers and 10 lepers, and only one comes back to give thanks.
Right. Wow. Great.
Most
great
of us don't.
point. Yeah.
We get what we want and we run off.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second noteworthy feature of these words is this business about no razor ever touching the head of her future son. So, what is this? What's going on with this? I'm going to give him to the Lord, and no razor shall touch his head. Do these words add up to something? And they do. So what Hannah is doing in her prayer is offering her child to God as a Nazarite. In Hebrew, it's called Nazir. We say Nazarite in English. And according to some laws in the book of Numbers, chapter 6, a Nazarite is someone who consecrates themselves to God for a specific purpose, and they mark their commitment in 3 ways. One is they don't cut their hair. Number 2 is they don't go near a dead body so that they don't become ceremonially unclean. And number 3, which is very, very pertinent to our story here, they don't, quote, drink wine or strong drink. So isn't that fascinating? Because when Eli misunderstands Hannah and accuses her of being drunk on wine, what is her answer? She says, I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink. That's just a direct quote, just that reverberation of number 6. So there's actually precedent for this in Judges 13 when Samson, the judge, his mother, she was barren too, like Hannah, and an angel comes and gives her the good news that you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. And the angel says, therefore, be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb. So here in our passage, it sure sounds like Hannah is being set up to have a consecrated baby in her womb, just like Samson's mother.
Mm. Again,
which I found fascinating.
Interesting connection.
Yes. So that brings us to our little third and last stop on this roadmap of handling misunderstandings. So if the first stop on the roadmap is to be silent, if we at all possibly can, and the second is to cast all our cares upon God, which we have a better chance of doing if we are silent, I think, then the third one is this: to remain humble. Now, when you listen closely to Hannah's speech, whether she's talking to God or to Eli, she remains humble in what she says and how she says it. So we've already heard Hannah's vow to God, in which she calls on the Lord of hosts to remember her. Now let's take a listen to what she says to Eli when he scolds her for being drunk. She says, no, my Lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. And in my ears, Hannah defends herself without getting defensive. Those are 2 different things. In fact, she does just the opposite. She chooses to be vulnerable with Eli, even though he has just attacked her, which, again, I find that eye-opening as well. Like, she makes the choice to, without getting into specifics, but to say, no, what you see here is before you is a broken woman. I'm broken.
Wow.
And I'm specifically broken before the Lord and before you, his servant.
And I don't sense defensiveness there. Do you, Rebecca?
No.
Yeah. Boy, that's beautiful humility.
Yes, but that's how that is the shield she chooses to defend herself with, is the truth. So then again, that pesky question comes up: can we say the same? In life, do you notice when you're accused of something that pride immediately rises up in you to defend yourself? I find that I want to pull out, my little list of accomplishments. oh, but I did well in school, or somebody else might say, I make six figures, or I volunteer at all these charities, or I hold positions of responsibility at church, or whatever it is you want to pull out of your virtual resume and defend yourself with. Those are prideful things.
Reminds me of that line you hear in movies often. Do you know who I am?
Yes, that hits the nail on the head, Bill. But she doesn't do any of that. She simply responds point by point to Eli's accusation, and in the most humble way possible. So, two things. Notice her honorifics. Honorifics are terms that denote respect for the person you're speaking to. She doesn't say, she uses my Lord and your servant instead of you and me. She talks about herself in the third person. She uses the same honorifics when she prays to God and when she also speaks to his servant Eli. And then second, Hannah invokes that Nazirite code of no wine or strong drink, which I think when Eli heard it, it rang a bell for him as a priest. I think he realized that there was something very, very serious and sacred about what Hannah was saying, and that whatever she was saying to God came from a place of deep commitment, that she was dead serious with whatever the transaction was happening with God. She was dead serious about it. And I think that language is so pristine and so pure in its humility and its clarity and its restraint that he's able to turn on a dime. He doesn't argue with her. He doesn't even ask her the specifics of what she's praying for. He simply just says, may God, grant you your petition.
Wow.
Which I find, that's incredible too. He does a complete 180.
Yeah, I completely disarmed him with that humility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rebecca, let me take a short break. Dr. Rebecca Rhee is my guest. We're talking about handling misunderstandings. We'll be right back. I'm back with Dr. Rebecca Rhee. We're talking about handling misunderstandings, and it seems like humility is a key ingredient because Hannah's humility certainly was instrumental in the way this situation was treated, and I think we all have something to learn from this. All right, Rebecca, let's keep going. So,
again, what I heard in Eli's speech what I heard in Eli's speech when he listens to Hannah say basically two things. She uses the honorifics of respect.
Mm-hmm.
She uses the Nazirite language. He listens to that, does a 180, and says, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you have made to him. And what I heard when he said that was something so heart-wrenching and beautiful, in that what he's saying in a simple yet very powerful way is saying, I see you. I see you. And how do we know that Hannah gets that message, I see you? Because if we look at, it's verse 18. She says, let your servant find favor in your eyes. So there's sort of this rhetoric of vision happening here in this exchange between Eli and Hannah of I see you, and she's like, and I see you seeing me too. This happened to me in a very personal way recently. I was recently diagnosed with sleep apnea, and my first response to this was like, oh, not one more thing. I had some chronic medical conditions, and I just thought, I don't want one more thing to have to worry about. It just is very overwhelming to me because the choices were, well, you can either use a CPAP machine, which if people don't know what that is, it's a breathing device that you put a mask over your face at night, and it forces air down your airway so that you don't stop breathing during the night. Or you can have surgery. And the surgery is a very, very painful one. So we decided, my doctors and I, that we would try the machine first. And then, because that was the more conservative decision. So, but I was still overwhelmed. I mean, I know a lot of people have much more serious health issues than that. And I know a lot of people use CPAP machines and eventually, after sometimes some very long periods of adjustment, do adjust to it and find that it really helps them to get a better night's rest. But for me, it just felt like one more thing. So we happened to be having a couple come over to our house for dinner around the time that this was happening. And this was, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months ago. I said, hey, just before you guys go, would you mind praying for me about this CPAP machine business? Because I'm really feeling kind of overwhelmed about it. And, it's hard for me to find something positive in this. And so they prayed the things that you would, dear ones would pray for you. They prayed for wisdom for the doctors and for a good adjustment period and for answers and for the results to come out well for me. But then the husband of this couple, right towards the end of the prayer time, said, I really feel like God is saying to you, Rebecca, I see you. Now, that happened before I ever picked up this story about Hannah
Wow.
and Eli. And I think that's why I'm hearing their exchange the way I am, is because just it wasn't a specific, oh, you'll get X, Y, and Z out of this when you're all done, being faithful about it. It was just, I get it. Kind of like God didn't have to say more than that. I see you, I get it, and I'm going to respond in compassion to your quandary the same way that Eli the priest responded with compassion to Hannah's quandary. Very powerful experience for me.
Well, that is such a profound moment, because when you are in the midst of any kind of struggle, if someone said, God sees you, and you really fully understood what that meant, you would say, this is the best news I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we spend most of our day trying to get noticed in some way, shape, or form, and yet the God of the universe sees us.
Yes. And we know if he sees us, he's going to do something.
Yes.
He's not going to see us and be impassive.
No.
So I certainly felt more able to confront my challenge with just, I see you, those 3 words, than any other kind of medical explanation or whatever else anybody could, other kind of reassurance and somebody might try to give me. That I see you, like, just cut through and got to my heart.
Yeah, it's such an amazingly simple message, which is 100% true.
Right. And, that silence I was telling you about before, that's sometimes the best way we can respond to being provoked or misunderstood, or even misunderstanding ourselves, is that silence. And I think once you feel seen, sometimes that all of a sudden you find you can quiet your heart in a way that you couldn't before.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have an opportunity to hear from God and hear things, encouragements from other people, and go to the Word and hear what the Scripture has to say in a way that you couldn't before when you were just too loudly responding to whatever was provoking you.
Rebecca, I've always wondered about when people go get counseling and the counselor hears the story and the counselor says, I understand. And I sometimes wonder, is that not what the person wants more than anything, is for someone to just go, I get it. I understand. Because sometimes we share problems with people that have known us for 30 or 40 years, and we have a history with them. so they don't understand because they have a history with us.
Yeah, sometimes that objective response of seeing you is all the more valuable because it is objective. And in our story here, Elkanah is the closest person, in terms of family that Hannah has. Mm-hmm. And yet he doesn't see her. I don't know whether he knows what Penina's been doing to her this whole time or not. I don't know whether he sees how devastated she is in her heart. Sometimes those closest to us can't quite see us objectively or can't quite give us the objectivity that we need in those moments of being misunderstood. So just to go on and be a little more personable about this is I deal with this quite a lot with my son. Whenever we go into public, he's like in the public, he's about 5'6" now, 125 pounds or something. He looks about the size of an adult. And from the outside, he's quite a handsome little boy. You wouldn't know that there is anything wrong with him. He's not in a wheelchair. He's not, I'm just saying there's nothing about him that would be immediately obvious, except for the fact that he likes to run and jump in the aisles of stores, and he likes to make quirky little sounds, and he repeats himself and gets very excited, and people turn around and look and realize very quickly he's not quote unquote normal. And often I feel judged as a parent, like, why don't you control your child? Why haven't you disciplined your child? Why haven't you shaped him in a different way? And I have to decide myself, am I going to go to God with my vexation? Because every time it happens, it's like it's the first time happening again.
Sure.
It never doesn't not hurt when someone does that to you, looks at you a certain way. Am I going to stay humble and remember that nothing entitles me to a neurotypical child? I can't come and say, you owe me this to God. That I am, in fact, blessed to have the child that I do, and that there are more blessings coming. I was intrigued to see that when Hannah gets the word that, you will be, may God grant your petition, she goes away. She's no longer sad. And it says that she does conceive, but the phrase there, it says, in due time. The last verse of the text that we read, and in due time, Hannah conceived and bore a son. And later on, she goes on to bear both sons and daughters. But it takes a while. And so I have to decide whether I want to believe that there are more blessings to come with my child in due time, or whether I'm just going to be fixated on what I see in front of me and lose hope about that.
Rebecca,
because I see people misunderstanding him.
Yeah, I think the courageous part of that statement is in due time, because that's the thing that I believe, if you're in the long game where you're not dealing with the uncomfortableness of feeling judged in the moment, is that God will in due time bring about incredible blessings.
Right. But, we have to be in a position where we can recognize them coming.
Right.
And that can be tricky.
Yeah.
The world is very loud. The world is very demanding and judging.
More so than I can ever remember.
Really?
Yeah. It seems like it's getting louder and more divisive, and yeah.
Well, I was surprised when I was thinking about this topic altogether, because we've never been so able to send messages to each other, to speak, like through social media, through our phones, through the technology that we have, through AI. Mm-hmm. And yet I feel like we've never been more mired in misunderstanding than ever.
I would agree with that.
because you make a statement, then you have to clarify that statement, then you have to clarify the statement after that. Or if you shoot off a text before reading it, you might end up autocorrecting. It might end up autocorrecting to the exact opposite of what
Right.
you meant to say.
And then there's never tone in those texts. So what do you mean by that? Are you mad at me?
Right.
And you're
Right.
trying to unravel all this stuff. So, yeah, we're communicating more and understanding less.
Yes, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to ask ourselves the questions, that I keep asking about. What about us? Can we say the same? Can we say the same? Is there something that you feel particularly misunderstood or unseen about in some area of your life right now?
Yeah, let's pause at that point and give people a chance to think, because that's a pretty important thought. We're talking to Dr. Rebecca Rhee. You can learn more about her at RebeccaRhee.net. She spells her last name Rhee. We'll be right back. We carry each other's burdens. Please know you can bring us your prayer concerns and we will pray. Share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio team by texting or calling 877-933-2484, or share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio staff and listeners at myfaithradio.com. How do you do when you feel misunderstood? How do you handle that? We've certainly learned some great things from God's Word in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Dr. Rebecca Rhee has been giving us some great teaching and insights. And some of the things, Rebecca, that I'm coming up against that I'm going to have to consider and ponder is the whole question you ask about what would we do? How is God the first place we go when we are full of anxiety, when we have things in life that feel uncertain? And I loved that we talked about 1 Peter 5:7, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And I especially love the comment that your friend's husband made about God seeing you. That is so, very, very amazing. And I think that's a great reminder for all of us that whatever situation we're in, take our anxieties to him and know that he has his eyes upon us. And that's a great comfort.
Yes. And it's pure comfort. There's no caveat about it. It's just what it is in a pure kind of way, and we can hang on to it for dear life.
Mm-hmm. And then the other one of the other points that really rang out for me was this whole: will I respond with humility if I feel attacked, or if I feel a little threatened? Do I defend myself? Do I race to puff myself up, or am I letting will my humility come first before any of that? And that's a big question. That I don't know how good I am at doing that.
I wonder if that's something that's a matter of practice, because most of the things, you don't get good at things by avoiding them. So if we don't speak with humility or learn to respond with humility right off the bat, and we don't put it into practice, when something very provocative comes our way, what are our chances of actually responding with humility, of pulling out those honorifics, those words of respect?
Right.
And thinking about, the commitments we've made to God, that we want to say, Lord, I've consecrated myself to you, and I've made commitments to you that if, these prayers get answered, I'm going to respond in a specific way, in a faithful way to what you've given me. I'm not going to forget. So what would that look like to put humility in practice? So when the zinger comes, you're ready.
That's not easy to do. But the great question that you're asking is, do you feel misunderstood, or maybe more so, do you feel unseen? Because I think that's a comment you made earlier in the hour, where does God see you when it comes to some of these things that you're dealing with in life, like with your son and now some of these medical things. It's like, I can't have one more thing pile on top of my already busy and stressful life, and here it is. Am I able to take this to the Lord, and am I going to remain humble about it? Because I know everybody listening right now has got some piece of themselves where they're being misunderstood or unseen, I'm guessing. And then what's the response that you're going to take?
Well, and this is where it's important to clarify. When I say Hannah teaches us that our first response is to be silent, that doesn't necessarily mean you talk to no one. It means you make sure you talk to the right person and in the right way. And then you might have a chance of being seen and heard, and that person might help you to see that God is indeed seeing and hearing you. I think God often works through people, and there's nothing quite as powerful as someone, like you said, either an objective someone or someone that you know who knows you in a positive way and says, God has always come through for you, and I've always seen you be so brave and courageous. This is another time, where you get the opportunity to be there, and I'll be with you the whole way. I'm here to hold your hand and be your friend. So being silent doesn't necessarily mean you tell no one.
Mm-hmm.
You do come and tell God. And I can't remember whether it was Elizabeth Elliot or someone else who said she often waits 3 days before speaking to another person about something that is really troublesome, and she spends those 3 days talking to God first. I was like, wow, that's kind of like almost like fasting.
This is a great strategy, but I understand it is exhausting.
Yes. So that's why it's important to have certain relationships in place around us. So when those moments come along, you talked about me being an advocate for moms, but it's true. We need to find people who have similar situations to ours, so that when that zinger comes, we can say, yes, I'm misunderstood by this person, but I am totally understood by that person. Thank God that he gave me someone who understands. Mm-hmm. Thank God that there was that person standing next to me that when I asked for prayer, who said, I see you.
Wow.
And totally understood why I was. He didn't think I was being, a baby about it. He just totally understood. Yeah, she's had more than her fair share. So let's pray about this. That's when he said, I see you.
Rebecca, we just have a couple minutes left. I would love for you to revisit the timetable for Hannah's eventual conception of Samuel, but the fact that it will come in due time, because there's a lot of, all of us, I would say, praying a very specific request right now, and we would prefer that prayer be answered by 6 o'clock tonight.
Well, it's interesting because the name Shamuel means he heard me. She said I asked for him, and then I asked for him from the Lord, and then his name turns out to be, and he heard me.
I love that.
So again, another sense, not just seeing, but hearing. And yes, just feeling like you can hang on because, again, someone said, I see you. Ailey said to her, I see you. And then she was able to hang on. She was no longer, it said she ate, and her face was no longer sad. It was already resolved for her in some ways. It was just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm. And I also just want to encourage everyone to always go first to God. That would be your very first place to start, and that was where you'd want to go. And just know that God is seeing you. He does see you. And I think that's just a great reminder.
Yes. And then that gives him the opportunity to start moving in your life.
Mm-hmm. All right. Rebecca, once again, I really did like this topic. When you sent it over, I thought this is going to hit home with a lot of people, because we all have or had or will have a misunderstanding, and we don't necessarily like it. So thank you so much for doing the show.
Oh, well, again, you're very welcome. And I'm happy to ponder the topic of being seen by God and seen by those he sends to help us.
Yeah, awesome. All right, we'll take a short break and be right back. My guest has been Rebecca Rhee. You can learn more about her at her website, RebeccaRhee.net. She spells her last name R-H-E-E. We'll be right back. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.
Jordan was just 21 when she found herself in an unplanned pregnancy.
I was scared, alone, and didn't know what to do.
And hear how a tweet from the world's richest man inspired a pro-life diaper company's ambitious campaign.
We blew up a huge billboard in Times Square and it said, "Make more babies."
They're all true stories that'll make you say,
"Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God."
Wow, God stories, wherever you get your podcasts and at myfaithpodcasts.com.